Today we have two panelists and one moderator with us today. So let me just first quickly talk about this panel. So startup ventures are leading the way in this digital media era. While journalists bring great skills and ideas to the table, viable business strategies and funding are sometimes harder to find. So today we have Sasa Vucinic, who is the founder of Indie Voices, a unique crowdfunding portal raising funds for independent media, mostly in the developing world. He also served 16 years as CEO of the Media Development Loan Fund, an organization he founded in 1995. And then to his left is Professor Jose Rueda, who is a professor at SCAD Hong Kong. He's also an entrepreneur and scientist focused on technology, applications, and venture development in the communications, media, and entertainment industry with over 18 years of experience. Unfortunately, due to scheduling change, Tomoko Hosaka cannot make it to the conference today. And then this session will be moderated by Professor Ying Chen, Director of the Journalism and Media Studies Centers here in Hong Kong U. Okay, welcome everyone.
Thank you. Welcome everybody. And this is an unusual panel session in the scale of things because entrepreneurship is a new topic at journalism schools. And it's also very important because as we know, the industry is being disrupted. The job was not like before. Right? So which means that journalists also need to develop your own business, your own project, and you need to be prepared for all things. So we're very glad today we have two experts in this area to talk about their projects, about their experiences. And this afternoon, we'll also have individual pitching sessions. And I'll talk about a bit later at the end of our panel. So first, we have Sasa, who will give us a presentation on his new project. And has it been launched yet? No. Okay, so we're going to get an exclusive preview of this very exciting project. And then we'll have Jose, who will talk about his experience raising money, advising projects, in developing the projects for the funding purposes. So, Sasha?
Okay. Now, so let's try if it works.
Let me do it. This is the classroom gadget, yeah?
This button.
Yes. Yeah, you need to switch.
This button.
PowerPoint's up here?
Yep.
No. Is that right?
Yeah, and we just go page up.
Oh, page up.
That's
okay.
good.
That's it.
Okay, excellent. Good morning. Either I'm too big or this is too short. Good morning again. I will start with a couple of facts about my previous life, about this organization called Media Development Loan Fund that I started in 1995. That was the organization that was meant to be the equivalent of what World Bank was supposed to be for the government's Media Development Loan Fund was supposed to be for independent media companies. And to make a long story short, it started in 1995. From 1995 until 2 years ago when I left, it gave more than $100 million in different forms of financing to independent media companies in 27 countries. There were more than 80 different companies that successfully won funding. Out of those 100 million, 90 million were in terms of in form of a loan. Total loss over 16 years was less than 2%, which is simply embarrassingly spectacularly good result. And I personally was lucky enough to be in a position to judge more than 200 different projects that seek financing. So I think that background is kind of important because it explains what I believe I will push as an argument is backed by not only as my academic knowledge, but I actually was seeing these things in real life. So here I go.
You want to use one of these so you don't have to.
Does it work?
No. But that is built like height like me, not for you. Oh, you can use this. Oh, here. No, this one. See, no, this one. No, this one. So you have more mobility. Not quite, huh?
Okay. Does it work? Is it switched on?
Work? Turn it on? Yeah.
Does it work? Yes, it does. Okay, so I will start with good news. When I talk about journalism and entrepreneurship, I have two pieces of good news. The first one is mindset of a journalist is actually made. It's perfectly made for it's perfect match for entrepreneur. Whoever sits in this room as a journalist actually is in business of questioning every fact that they receive. They're in business of asking a lot of questions. They never fall in love and stay in love with the same idea for too long a time. They have very critical mind, and that are all perfect characteristics for a good entrepreneur. So, if you're a journalist, my theory is that most of the journalists can be very, very good businessmen. It doesn't work the other way around. It's very limited. So that's a first piece of good news. The second one is, this is the time of a media gold rush. This is the time, the equivalent of those times when Apple and Macintosh were created. This is the time when media industry is being reinvented. 20, 30 years from now, your kids will be asking you, what were you doing in these fabulous times when big companies were being created? So if there is any drop of entrepreneurship in you, you should actually be thinking about these days as a perfect time to start a new thing. So that's the good news. The bad news is there is no money. So the perfect time to start something, you have a great mindset, everything is lined up except there is no money. We'll go back to that. And I would say even probably worse than that is there is a lack of investment infrastructure. So when you look, and for one of my articles I did analysis comparing media industry with technology industry. Technology industry is incredibly successful because they have the whole list, they have the whole infrastructure, the whole network of organizations that help build that industry, and that is they have different incubators, accelerators, mentorship programs, seed funds, venture funds, investment funds, even specialized law firms, for startup companies, specialized legal instruments and infrastructure. They have different types of exit strategies, for the investors to understand how and when to exit. So there's this whole network of things that helps investor find a way to a good investment and actually get out of there. That does not exist for media yet. So those are two pretty bad pieces of news, and having these four kind of main things in mind, I thought that it would be interesting to resolve this first issue. There is no money, and to invent a new media investor. And that is how I come to my new project. Project is called Indie Voices. Has this cool logo. We just announced that we will be launching soon. You see a URL up there. The whole point of the project is, actually before I go there, I will advise you if you go there to see who are the advisors. I actually managed to, I think, attract incredibly spectacular group of smart people who are helping launch this. And this is how the website looks like. So we're trying to be clean, easy to understand, And the point is to do something that people call crowdfunding. I believe that most of you are familiar with crowdfunding. The idea of the latest estimation show that crowdfunding will this year attract more than $6 billion. I would like to think about our website and our new project as crowd financing, as opposed to different crowdfunding sites that mostly work with donations. We actually have a little bit more ambitious plans, but I will detail them later. I'm going to right now just run quickly through how the site looks like. This is Create Your Project. This is how it works, the explanation. These are some of the projects that are there. You see they are from Mozambique, Serbia, United States. For now, these are the initial investors. And now I want to talk a little bit more about philosophy and what the project is about. So the purpose is, the main question that people usually ask me is, what can you get funding for through this tool? And I would like to think that everything media would be a proper answer. Everything media means anything you can possibly imagine is a socially relevant media project. It can finance established and mature media companies. It can establish startup. It can fund startups. It can fund TV production, any kind of a content production, documentaries, photography projects, magazines, investigative. The topic, there will be each month, there will be a different investment topic. The first topic that we will open with will be investigative journalism in Latin America. So 7 investigative journalism centers will, each one of them have different projects. We will, I have a list somewhere of 11 countries that will start when we open. We will have projects in Malaysia, Indonesia, India, USA, Mozambique, and 6 Latin American countries. As you can see, focuses on developing world. That is basically initially when I started the project, and until recently, my only goal was to actually have projects outside of US and Western world. But then my American friends convinced me that we should, as a side effect of the whole project, maybe fix media in US also, while we are in business. So we then expanded it to also include some of the US and Canadian projects. I mentioned that I would like to think about this project as crowd financing project instead of crowdfunding. Crowdfunding being only one type of financing that you can get. We plan to start with donations, so you will be able to just give $50 to somebody. You will be able to also give no interest loan, so you give $50, get $50 back. You'll be able to give loan with interest, so you give $50, I get 5% at the top of that back. There will be, as soon as that becomes legal in the US, which probably will be early next year, a possibility to buy fractional ownership of a media company. So I actually have lined up a couple of projects already who have this interesting idea of co-op ownership, and they would like to sell the equity to tens of thousands of people who are their former audience. And if you've noticed, one of the taglines we have is, why occupy media if you can own it? That is what we mean. That specifically in one reasonably big US city, there is a gentleman who wants to start a newspaper, and he would like to have 10,000 owners, and anyone who is actually registered to live in that city qualifies to be one of the owners, and that is how he wants to sell his equity. So that hopefully will be possible, and as soon as we make that possible, we will also establish some kind of a marketplace in which you, once you buy it, you will be able to sell it, and there will be some kind of a trading place for that. This is the philosophy of what we are trying to do. We are basically trying to do part of the problem why media does not have, there is no financing for media, is that it's actually all the markets are very separated from each other. So if you can think about this platform as a place in which all the relevant media projects from one side are entering that platform to meet all the money that is available on the other side. And that money is actually being created, being the investor is being invented by turning and finding that investor in the crowd that used to be our audience. So that is the place in which you will, as if you're an individual investor, will be able to come and see 30, 40, 50 projects at the same time from any one of these countries in which we will be working. That would be a philosophy. This is the goal. We actually think that we will not stay alone in this business for a very long time, but we actually want to, once we establish that something like this is possible, we believe that a lot of other smaller crowd financing sites will be opened to cover smaller geographic areas. But I really honestly believe that this is going to disrupt the way that media is being financed today. One of the side effects of what we will be doing is we believe that we will actually reinvent media ownership. If you think how much time you spend in school and how much time you spend attending all these different conferences talking about new digital technologies and new digital newsrooms and how everything is changed, and there's not one thing that within the media industry is the same as it was 5 years ago. Actually, there is one, and that is media ownership. Last time anything changed in media ownership was in early 70s when some of these media companies went public. That was the latest innovation in that field. So what we are actually doing is we are cramming this whole new industry within the constraints of this very old analog ownership structure, which is either a family or which is a corporate ownership. We believe that once our platform is up and running, that it will allow that ownership also become digital, which means that it will, as entry barrier, will practically disappear. With $500, you can become a fractional Murdoch. You can own something. We believe that there actually will be a flood of these new media owners. But not to spend too much time on that. Here is different applications of our funding portal. So as I mentioned, it can be any new media project, any startup can actually be funded, as long as you can find enough support out there in the crowd to give you money. Old media, mature media companies can get different forms of financing. Change in ownership, I mentioned that. Journalism schools. I think that today afternoon, we will do one of the experiments of that type. But the idea is that hopefully journalism schools will understand that entrepreneurship is one of the basic, will become one of the basic elements of journalism education. And imagine the situation in which Hong Kong University at the beginning of school year say, commit to spend $100,000. That's not enough, but say $100,000 to fund 3 media projects, 3 best student-initiated media projects. That sometime, students go through different phases, go into business planning, analyzing. At the end of, say, semester, at the end of the year, they have a project. Each one of those projects gets to pitch. There's a team that selects 3 best. Those 3 get listed on our platform. Whoever manages to raise equal amount of money from the crowd get actually a media company at the end of the year. So that is one of the possible applications of the platform. Now, very similarly, it can work with different foundations or different institutional investors. You can make different combinations of Gates Foundation funding public health journalism in Western Africa, but only first 50%, the other 50% is matched by the crowd, or different other combinations can be put together for different types of funding of media. And I think I will leave it here.
Thank you. So I'm glad you have journalism schools up there. So can I put a whole school up there on your platform? I'm sure we have many questions. Hold the question, and we'll have Jose tell us what he has done and his perspective on the issue of entrepreneurship.
May I borrow the...
Absolutely. Sorry.
Well, good morning. Great talk. Thank you, Professor Chan. I come from a different background, so I'm going to give you a bit of the context for my talk. And I'm going to share lessons learned in investment of media companies, particularly in your area, and digital companies as well. So I was a scientist, technologist, engineering kind of person. And I discovered one day that there was a very interesting analogy between a drill, making a hole in the wall, and why people needed the hole. So I was very much into making the drill until I learned that actually people don't buy the drill, they buy the hole. What you really want is a hole in the wall with particular characteristics and depth and so on. So I switched from making drills to thinking of the hole, meaning thinking why people do what they do and why somebody cares about what they do. So I got involved in an investment fund that raised money from the crowd in this case, but it was different in the sense that it was pension money. So people invested in their community by saying, if we put money in this fund, the fund will invest in companies in this community and help entrepreneurs and established companies and so on move forward, but there was a reason for it. It was about employment of the local community, and it was about ideas from the local community reaching the world. So it was really about investing in companies locally to help them get to global markets. So I got involved in that because I believed in the other side of entrepreneurship. It's not just the finance and controlling the money and managing the money, but it was how do you do that, the execution side. So in the fund, we had a lot of emphasis on doing things right, getting the right number of people, the right team, and so on. And the analogy that I like to use analogies, so I'll bring a few of those. The analogy that I used a lot was to be in the sport, you need to have the right number of people, the right positions, the right coach, all of that. So entrepreneurship is a sport. It's like going to a basketball tournament by yourself. You need a team of people. You need some experts to play the role. So in this case, in media, particularly in your area, we realized that people knew the content, people asked questions, but there was this other side. They didn't have the teams, they couldn't communicate with investors, and they couldn't reach the audience. So our objective was, once we had the money, it was finding those companies. It wasn't just funding anybody, but finding those companies that made sense. So it was about $120 million Canadian, funded about 35 companies. Some of them went into pharmaceuticals and other areas because that was the local environment. But a lot of those went into media, digital media, and so on. Then I specialize in games, in interactive media. So that's sort of my recent area. But I have some lessons for you. It's a bit dark, but I totally echo what Sasha said. There is a media revolution. There is mass media, niche media, digital media, interactive media. You hear it all the time. So I think people like yourself should ask the question, what does that mean and why? Why are we saying that there are opportunities? It's not just that trivial, because there is Facebook and there is other stuff to see what the opportunities are. And the opportunities are often not about reinventing or even innovating. It's about making things a little bit better. So understand what the professionals do. Why is a company like Facebook successful? What is the core value proposition? Why do people subscribe to Facebook? And I think you are uniquely positioned for that. as well as understanding the audience. Unfortunately, often we think of the audience as viewers, and Sasha mentioned that as well. But actually, they are participating. They are posting things. They are twittering. Some of you are taking pictures and twittering that you are actually here. And that's interesting. So what does that mean, and why do you do it? So the opportunities come from that. Now, media production and distribution has changed quite a bit. You can produce with your phone. We used to have studios with sound recording sessions and programmers and technologies, and now you need a phone, basically. And even if you run out of battery, you will borrow your phone or your friend's phone and still publish something, right? That happened to me recently. So I don't have my phone, I have to tweet something, so I borrow somebody's phone. So I'm still producing. That's interesting. Things are changing. So assume change. Assume that if your idea doesn't fit today, there may be a reason. The world may change very fast and fit in a few months, in 3 months, or who knows. But things are changing very fast. The second lesson that I learned on entrepreneurship is that it's a lifestyle. It is not about just set up a business. And I'm sure you hear these ideas all the time. It is not just about set up a business because there's a business case. It's really about you. So it's really about the lifestyle. And are you prepared to live that lifestyle of an entrepreneur? It's not about a venture or 2 or 3. It's a lifestyle. Many ventures and living the way the entrepreneurs live. Now, there is a big difference in the role that you play as an entrepreneur in the team. You need a team. I will emphasize that. It's very difficult to play by yourself. It's like going to the World Cup and playing by yourself also against another 11 people and their coach and their reserves. So you need a team. So entrepreneurship is about understanding yourself. It's really about what makes you work and why do you want to be an entrepreneur, and why other people want to be in that mode as well. It is not just about intentions. So I have the intention of having my own business. That doesn't mean anything. It's about the objectives. Why? Where is this going? So in a venture fund, we will ask these questions a lot. It's not about the business plan, it's about why. What's between the ears, we used to say. Why are people here in this room talking? Why should we listen? So third point on financing. You need to speak the language of financing a bit. Not a lot. You can always get somebody that is an expert, but you need to understand what financing means. Some of the terms that Sasha used. There's a whole ecosystem in financing. It's not just shares and investment and warrants and other things. There is a whole language of that, a whole discipline, and it's interesting to speak the language. Otherwise, it's like playing rugby and not knowing the rules and not knowing what people are saying in the audience. Now, the one lesson I'd like you to consider, especially later in our workshop in the afternoon, is that when you pitch a media business, or in anything, but for you a media business, keep asking yourself the question, is this person willing to hear more from me? If at that point in the pitch, the answer is no, stop talking. But prepare the presentation in such a way that at every point or every couple of points, if you were to ask a person, would you like to hear more, they will say yes. That was really the big lesson for me and a big realization. It seems simple, but you will see so many PowerPoints, so many presentations, so many plans structured in a really boring way, in a way that it doesn't make sense, in a way that it doesn't really address the key questions. So tell me first, why are you here? You say, I'm looking for $10 million to do this and that. Is that for you? If I say no, then don't tell me what the idea is. Why would you do that, right? You need to pitch maybe 200 times, so save those times to people that actually are prepared to listen. There is a big element of entrepreneurship as well that I wanted to mention to you. If in this lifestyle you can make $1, this is great. Recover the cost, make $1. Move on to the next venture. It's not always about what people think, IPO and driving Ferraris. That has nothing to do with it. Money and success comes as a result of doing things for the right reasons and believing in what you are doing. But if you can make $1, you will be a genius in your first venture. It's not that easy. So finally, on markets, there is a misunderstanding sometimes that you need to innovate and introduce something new that the world has never seen. And of course, if they have never seen it, they don't know if they should buy it. Maybe they don't trust you. Maybe they don't like it. Maybe you're scaring them with your new thing. But sometimes people want something to work better. just a little bit better. So sometimes what you need to be selling is what people buy with a little plus. Now, for some of us educated in universities and so on, sometimes media or projects are beneath our skills. But that's what people buy. Like if you think of Facebook, a lot of people in universities will think, well, that's gossip, who cares? I don't like it. It's $1 billion company, right? So if we talk about entrepreneurship, it's a question of understanding what people buy and sell what they are buying. Just make it a little bit better. So again, focus on the why, understand why people are buying, make it a little bit better, and focus on the team. Make $1, and more importantly, understand this lifestyle of entrepreneurship and the great opportunity ahead. So with that, back to Professor Chan. Thanks.
Thank you. Get that lights on. Thank you. You do. Okay. Great. Okay, we have a platform. We have the know-how, right? So what we need is projects, right? So before I open up to the floor, maybe I'll ask each of you a couple of questions. First is, what kind of projects will sell? It sounds, in the scale of things, right? We're not talking about Facebook, maybe, but digital media. So with the audience here, what kind of projects would be interesting and can attract money?
You want to start first?
Okay, I'm taking it.
Give us all your secret. Yes.
To me, that's an easy question. If you look at what people buy, what people engage their minds into, you can always find a venture around that. You don't need to worry about the masses. You worry about the small groups, because you assume that those small groups exist everywhere. So I'm particularly these days interested in interactive entertainment and applications in other areas to make things a little bit more engaging. So I think anything in that area is sellable, is investable, and it is generally easy to launch.
I think there's incredible range of different things that can actually be sold these days to the crowd and get funding. There was a Dutch project that recently raised more than 1 million euros. There was this other project in the US called Meta, which raised $400,000, and it is a scientific journal, so it's for science. People generally would think that is not going to sell. They raised $400,000. Generally, estimations are that there will be $6 billion, somewhere in the range of $6 billion, gone through crowdfunding in 2013. 55% of that in the States, 45% in Europe. There's the incredible range of different small projects. As we said, technology now allows very small numbers to become a big business. So if you have a targeted audience to a small number of people, I'm sure that everyone knows that outfit in New York with 6 employees won the Pulitzer Prize this year. So, everything has changed, and I think that there's incredible number of opportunities now that, for funding.
And where would money come from? You mentioned crowdsourcing. You work with a fund. Can you be more specific? Where's the money?
Well, I think that there are 4 different types of money. The first one is regular individual who is now through Kickstarter and other places investing $50 for yet another iPhone cover, right? How many iPhone covers does this world need? So I think that eventually they will stop funding iPhones and will start iPhone covers and will start funding something with meaning. So that's the first, in my mind, the first type of investors is that one. The second one is this category of high net worth individuals, which are now investing in different philanthropic causes. They do not have tools to recognize these. Until now, there were no tools and no places in which some of these media projects could actually be explained to them and displayed. And I think that will become a serious source of funding. Family offices, foundations, and one that I really count on very much, which is media companies. I had some preliminary talks with a big Canadian media company which understands that their corporate social responsibility actually is to support other media companies in less fortunate parts of the world, and they're willing to commit a certain amount of money on their own, but they're also willing to try to convene all the media companies in Canada to create a fund that would be supporting media companies outside of Western world. Now, if you think about Canada, Sweden, Norway, there's a pretty big number of those companies that can, be put together. So I think that money can be found.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. Of course, I agree with that. There's an article in The Economist that highlights Hong Kong as second in the world in terms of venture money for new ventures. So this particular spot in the world is particularly well suited for new ideas. Now, the difficulty is that you have to give the people with the keys to the vault a better plan than a mall, because a mall is well understood. A building with condominiums is very well understood. People know how to invest in that. People know how to capitalize that kind of investment. And most of the time, the plans for a media company don't match in quality. But this particular city is, as a city, it's a very large capital market, second sometimes to US and Israel only, and they switch back and forth. So where is the money? In this city in particular.
Ask one more question. I'll open up to the floor. Yes, there's money in Hong Kong, right, as Jose says, but it seems that people in this town, they don't love the media, especially the news media, that much. They maybe, or there's a love-hate relationship with the media. Do you see that? You think it's still possible to raise money in Asia, in Hong Kong, for the media?
Let me take that one first, Sasha. Yes, people in this town know business, clearly. So you need to see it from a business proposition, and that's it. Secondly, this is not a market, it's just a city. So, in North America, we don't think, again, as Montreal as a market at all. So the market has to be bigger than Hong Kong, obviously, in a plan like this. Whereas a mall, you think of the local market. So the mentality of pitching a mall in a condominium tower, pitching a media business doesn't work, obviously. So in Hong Kong, we have that problem. That it's not that people hate the media, it's people don't like a bad pitch.
Yeah, I would just add to that a little bit of a general view. Media generally was never less regarded. It was never trusted less than it is these days. If you read Pew researches on trust is on all-time low, and I actually think that's the great chance. Because when, I think that media probably touched the bottom because there's no way lower. And I believe that people will start investing in something that they will trust. So if I were to start a media company, I think if I would, the only thing that I would want to sell is that trust. So that is one point which I think is important. The second one is I would connect this amount of money that is available for media with general regard for press freedom in that place. I would compare this place with Singapore. Singapore being probably either equally affluent or maybe even a little bit higher on the average. I don't think that there is too much money to be invested in media there, because Singapore does not recognize, or how shall I want to be very precise over here, I don't think that respect for press freedom is generally recognized there as something that is valuable for that society. Therefore, they do not think that investing in press freedom makes sense. I think that some places that are not as wealthy but have higher regard for press freedom are actually a better chance to raise money for this cause.
Okay, thank you. Trust, press freedom, connect those dots. Okay. Questions? Okay, wow. Alan, Vincent, and then we'll go there to here. Okay, Alan.
Question for Sasha. I'm not familiar with the idea of crowd financing, but basically, I'm guessing that you get people, you get people with projects to solicit via online, right? And then people in the crowd, these are people who can be anybody, online, then they can make a choice how much, if they're interested in investing, right?
That's correct.
That's correct. Okay. Now, in your new business, how would you be number one guarantee? I guess you don't guarantee anything. You're a portal. You present the information. One is people with projects. The other one is people make a choice of whether or not they want to invest, right? But it's when people invest, how do they make sure that there's guarantee that they will get their money back? And what role do you play in your business in helping them to ensure they get that back?
That's a great question.
So the question at the back, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a great question. Basically, we do guarantee that there is no fraud, that every pitch that will be made is pitch made in honestly. Platform is going to be curated heavily. We expect 80% of all the projects to actually come there by invitation. So I will have the whole network of about 50 people that we define as nominators. So they will be living in different places, different parts of the world. They will say, this is a great project, we know this guy. Project gets in. What we guarantee is that it is legitimate legal project. We do legal and other due diligence. And based on what they claim they will do, we will do our best to make sure that they deliver. If they say they will produce, as one project is, 6 hours of program-specific programming, that they will show it, we'll actually chase them, making sure that they actually do that. If there is somebody who is taking a loan, we will do due diligence and actually look through their books and make sure that they can repay. The plan is that we will be guardians of the platform for the first year. And then the plan is to leave this, to transfer this guardian role to people who were already on the platform. So once we have these 7, I spent about 3 months working on these 7 investigative journalism centers in Latin America, and probably 4 or 5 I knew from before. Once we put them all on the platform, they get funding. Basically, we will not let anybody on the platform before those 7 say, we actually know these people, we guarantee they're okay. So it's a kind of self-policing mechanism, because it is in nobody's interest to allow fraud on the platform.
But just a follow-up. The businesses do go out of business. In fact, 9 out of 10 businesses that launch go out of business. And so how do you prevent that from happening? It's difficult, right?
Yeah, so that's why I said bona fide. Right, so they make an honest pitch, and they do everything they are supposed to do bona fide. There's always a management risk. There's always different types of risks. If you invest in Citibank, or if you invest in any other bank, there is a risk that you may lose your money. So nobody can avoid that risk. But we are trying to minimize that. And actually, I'm working on this for 2 years. Last year, working only on legal aspects of this thing, because we are actually offering something to a general public, and regulators are very, very sensitive about that.
Okay. Vincent? We don't have a roaming mic, so if you're in front, you can speak the microphone or speak louder if you're in the back.
Thank you. My name is Vincent Kwan. I have been in the venture capital industry before. So I guess maybe I'm not going to kind of pour cold water onto your head, but I guess the capital providers, they are really looking for return on the money that they invest in you. And one of the first kind of things that they will be asking is what is the business model? What kind of products that you're going to sell? And then as you have mentioned, there is no kind of a ready finance infrastructure in the media industry yet, unlike in the case of the film industry, when you can really have a really very concrete kind of project, a script, and also you have lined up a lot of things like the director led by the and then with movie stars coming in and so on and so forth, and then you can actually pre-sell. In other words, so you can have futures. You can sell to the regional distributors and so on. There is a fully set up kind of well-defined sort of a fundraising process in specific industries. But in the case of the media services, it is really brand new. Of course, I like new ideas. But on the other hand, you probably need to really convince the potential fund providers to what exactly you really want to do in terms of the business model, how you're going to catch all the eyeballs. And then, for example, one of the revenue streams could be, say, advertising. And what sort of news that you're going to kind of put up onto your portal, for example. And, basically people will be asking a lot of questions like this. And also your management team, your capability, and how you're going to, bring all these kind of things together to make it a viable business model. And, I'll be more than happy to kind of learn a bit more from both of you as to, whether, there could be some potential for your, making a breakthrough. But in the meantime, I'm still a little bit skeptical. So, it is basically a more comment than, a question. Nothing very specific, but, I think you really need to learn a lot about what you plan to do first.
Okay, words of caution. We have a question there. And Johnny, yeah?
But I will be also very looking forward to learning from you, how to set up those things.
Is this working? Yeah. My name is Anjani. My question is, and it's kind of a follow-up to this, is how much in the, you mentioned Inside Climate News earlier, and you look at models of, say, ProPublica, which is essentially a non-profit news startup. How much of this, in this part of the world especially, how much value is there on social return? Because a lot of these things are pure donations, pure just, here's X million dollars, go do good reporting, do good investigative reporting. And how much in this part of the world, especially, and Jose, you mentioned Hong Kong, there's a lot of, there's money and there's capital. Do you think people are ready to start committing to social returns over capital returns? Is there a general trend in that direction? Is there, because a part of it I think has to have a bit of philanthropy at the end of the day.
You want to talk about Hong Kong? And
Okay, I'll take it first. Great question. Something called Facebook never sold a product, and people know that in financial markets really well. In fact, in Hong Kong, a lot of the capital is raised for these kinds of ventures that you don't hear for a while because they're not selling anything. But there are institutions like Morgan Stanley, New York, Hong Kong, doing things together. So people understand that there is value in the community, in capturing the minds and souls and other things. It's not just a transaction, a product transaction. Definitely that is understood now as a result of things like Facebook and Instagram. So I don't think that's a huge concern. There is an understanding, but at the end, that has to translate into a business. There has to be evaluation. So if you say the evaluation of this venture is like Instagram, people understand. If you say, I'm just going to change the world because I say so, people may not understand that. So it has to be translated into terms that people understand.
Yeah, I also want to make 2 points. One is, let's define what business model means. Right? Business model in media industry used to mean that you have to make profits. Business model used to mean in the US that over a period of 10 years, from late 80s until late 90s, late 70s until late 80s, they used to make 19% annual return, which is outrageous, right? 19%. I don't know other business that brings you that return. Now, investors got a little bit spoiled. If you would bring all of that down to 5, 6, 7% annually, even New York Times is making that return. Even limping Washington Post is making that much. So, business model, I think in these times means different things. Times of 19% annual return is gone. 7 may become, also business model means that some of the entities may be funded by nonprofit money. I believe that public hospital, although part of their financing for public hospital comes from taxpayers, but that's a business model. They start at the beginning of the year with, some money, and they end the end of the year, they're not in red. So maybe some media models or some media entities will have this mixture of different kinds of money, being mixed in there. Look at National Public Radio. They do that for, 30 years. They get part of funding from the government, part of, individuals, part of this, part of that. So they put it somehow together. So that would be one part of the answer. I think that we have to start thinking about business model, something that is much wider than just making simple profits. Point number two is there's this huge movement towards what is now called participatory economy, which includes impact investing, which includes returns that are not 10-15% a year, but much smaller. And now if you would go to HSBC and ask them to give you 7% annual return, you can't get that. And I'm sure that some of the projects on my platform will be giving 7%. So if you look, in those relative terms, it's like incredible return, right? 7%. 4 years later, no one would turn around. You would not, go down on the street to pick up 7%. So I think in between these two big trends, media has great chance.
Let's have a question at the back. She raised her hands early. Yes. You can run.
This is a question for Sasha. I wanted to ask you the process that you went through in order to come to your idea for Indie Voices. Was there a light bulb moment where you realized this is the kind of project that I want to go into? Or could you tell us a little bit about how you came up with the idea?
Yeah, it was reverse engineering. It was actually literally, I started with that question that I had, and I have even a presentation how I came to that. And how do you invent money to get into independent media specifically? I put in there into this kind of juice, into mixer blender, I put in there everything from participatory economy and impact investing and all of that new money that is coming out. And what comes out in different things, what comes out is it's something that resembles crowdfunding, as that is obviously an unexplainably popular trend. And I think that's the only way how we can invent this new money and get it in to pump it in.
I was reminded we have 4 minutes left. So over there, wow, I can see a lot of interest. Yeah, shoot, come on. Make your question short and sweet. And we go to May because she's from Myanmar. So.
Well, thank you. My question is for both gentlemen because I really want to know what kind of people that you think that can start up a media company or a media organization. Because traditional journalists, the skill set that we packed with is not enough, right? The reason why I want to ask Professor Jose is that do you think journalists should be packed with the skill of coding and technology? There's a hot debate about this. And in terms of you're going to create an interface that change the way that people perceive information and news. That's it.
Great question again. No, you can hire those people. So what you want is to not focus on the skills, but focus on why you do it, and understand things such as, profit doesn't mean making money and buying things. It means excess cash, excess capital. What do you do with that? So it's really a question of expertise and experience, but more importantly, guts. And it's a question of bravery and arrogance even, believing that you can do it, and then hire all of those people with the skills.
Very shortly, I think that anyone can be an entrepreneur. The oldest one I met was a gentleman who is 70 years old, started his newspaper in Russia, in Yakutia. There were some 19, 20-year-old kids, anything in between. So I think it's a mindset. So you are either brave to try or you don't try. It's very simple. Just to add to this, I think that you should take a course of coding. I think that it is important that you understand that they don't scare you when they come to you and tell you what is possible, what is not possible. I don't think you should be actually coding, but you need to know the basics so that you are not taken for a ride by those guys who know how to do it.
Okay, May, make it short. I don't think we can. Yeah, okay.
Yes, I am May from Myanmar. Yes, our peoples are the transitional period training. So our president U Thein Sein is doing many incredible political and economics reform. So, do you have any plan to invest in Myanmar? Sasa. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Short end. Maybe I'll take one more question if they're really short. Olivia, and then here, and then that's it.
I had 2 questions, but I'll make it one.
Make it one.
To what extent do you have to be careful of this sort of funding tipping the balance into advocacy instead of journalism and straight reporting?
Maybe we have this question too. Quickly.
Hi, I'm Rachel Liu. I actually started a site called Tea Leaf Nation, and that covers China, and it's I think it's a new media site, and I'll be excited to present that later on today. But my question from an entrepreneur's point of view is that how much control how much strain is attached to whatever money in terms of editorial control, what goes on the day-to-day operation of the company?
I'll start that. So, from an investor perspective, we don't want to run the company unless you're not doing a good job. So, in a way, you always want control of that company. Otherwise, it's not your company, right? Nobody wants to invest in something else than what you presented. So you have to take control. Anybody that wants to take control of your company is kind of shooting themselves in the foot because you are the one doing the work. So from that perspective, walk away if the investor wants to take control of the company. But conversely, it's your job, so do it well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Nobody actually wants control of the company. What we will insist on the platform, and what in my previous life I did is, you don't want editorial control. You want people to be responsible and do exactly what they were doing before, not to get worse, not to slide into what you were saying, this, propaganda type of a thing.
You have 30-second answer to the issue about advocacy.
Advocacy, I don't like it. I don't think it belongs to journalism. I think we should avoid it at any cost.
But time's up. But the 2 gentlemen, you'll be around. Jose will be around. Sasha will be around. Actually, there's also a session in the afternoon. If you have brilliant ideas or stupid ideas too, right? Because that's where the good projects come from. Sign up for the pitch, right? Wendy would have the details, right? I think the details are on the site or announced outside. It started in the afternoon, right? 2:30, and the. Oh, so Anjali's you're in charge. Okay, so people can sign up, and they will be around to answer questions and discuss more of these issues. And let's give them a hand. Thank you very much.